welcome to the Muslim Street at our new time moving forward, 12 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. This is a good time as we move into the fall winter session. And again, we're going to have some hot topics, have some guests on the Zoom today with us. Of course, my co-host, Dr. Viper White, will be with us. We also have Art Mobley of the Dot 423, and also expecting a guest out of Chicago, Chicago Public School System, Greg Sane. Greg works with conflict resolution inside of the Chicago Public Schools, and also and by definition, the Chicago street organizations, i.e. gangs. All right. So we're going to be diving into a very important topic, a hot topic right now. And that's Donald Trump, President Trump's occupation of the city of Chicago. Before we get to that, you can find us, the Muslim Street, across all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, formerly Twitter, now X, and of course at www.themuslimstreet.com on our website. We're produced out of Accra, Ghana by the Lance Scurv Show, somewhere in a place called Abori up in the mountains. We don't know where Lance is. I got to tell you that right now. But Lance has a big mansion there. He's off the grid. He's doing his thing. More power to you. And Lance, we're gonna have to have a show. We're gonna have to have a show specifically talking about this patriot movement of Black Americans to Ghana, right? We're gonna have to talk about some of the nuance, some of the positive things that are coming out of that. Some of the things that I was in Ghana in 1991 and 1992 as guest of Chairman Jerry Rawlings when it was the PNDC. He had took charge during a coup to take back control of that government, and the PNDC was launching free elections the next year. I had this great project. I was, just a young buck, but I had this great idea for a great project to kind of blend together the dream of Asaji Kwame Nkrumah, and that was to extend dual citizenship to the African diaspora, particularly the Africans who had suffered for 400 years at the beginning of that 400 years, of course, through the 19th century, the European slave trade. Right. So anyway, I was there for a few months as a guest of the great Akbar Muhammad, who was the international representative and African representative of Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. And he did a mighty work over there. It was just exceptional. Lance, you have to understand this, man. I want you to imagine that here's the setup for you. New Year's Eve, I am in the presidential palace. Chairman Rawlings has a cast on his foot because he broke his leg or something like that. The next day is the celebration of January 1st, 1992, the celebration of the PNDC, and they're going to launch free elections. As a celebration, they had in the big square in Accra, they had everything all set up. And literally, out of the 54 countries at the time, there probably was representatives, whether they were heads of states, ambassadors, men and women of big affairs from about 40 of those countries. So this is big stuff, all sitting on the dais. And just to let you know, Akbar Muhammad was taking care of business over there. Akbar Muhammad was sitting on the front row, center, and guess who was sitting next to him? Malik Aziz, right? So, listen, and this is the first military parade, right? They had tanks, they had MiGs flying over, and you know what I was impressed by? That all the tanks had names on them of great African historical figures. Like Asi Tutu and Mansa Musa rolling through there, bro. It was cold-blooded. Wow. And here I am sitting on the front row, right center for the whole session.
Wow.
Chairman Rawlings marched his military through there, and then he marched his female military through there, bro. Wow, serious. It was a serious parade, man. So we have to do a show. Art and Dr. White, who has all have been to Ghana on this issue of repatriation of Africans, particularly. There's a big push there that's been going on for the last few years. A rededication, because Art Mobley of Darfur 23 worked years ago, decades ago, with Dr. Sullivan, who was attempting to do the same thing. But now we see, what I'm seeing, Art, I'm seeing, and Dr. White, I'm seeing ordinary, apolitical, unconscious Black people showing up in Ghana. And you know what they're doing. They're doing apolitical, ordinary, unconscious things. Is that a safe way to say it, Lance?
Yep.
Yeah. And one of the things that I saw when I was over at Dr. White, you might have saw the same thing, and it bothered me. There was some vestiges left over from the 1960s, and they were from, I think it was the Hebrew Israelites. They were from Detroit. And we ran into them, and I was talking to them, and yada, yada, and they said, if you're thinking about moving over here, just make sure you get the Hajis to work for you. They lazy, but so I looked at him. I was like, "Oh, who are these Hajis that you're talking about?" Oh, he said those are the Muslims, which made up at the time about 40% of the Ghanaian population.
Yeah, still about there.
And what I gathered out of him saying that, and his wife standing there, all this kind of stuff, I say, look at these Negroes from Negro Hebrews from Detroit, and who have been oppressed for 400 years. Now they have arrived on the African continent. And guess what they will do? Out of their subconscious mind, find someone to oppress, right? So their whole attitude while they were over there, I was oppressed in America, I got my American dollars, I got my American passport. Let me put on some oppression of these people like, the white man did to us in the United States. Literally, that's what they were doing, bro. And Lance, if that attitude is over there, it would show up in the ways, Art, where you will find Africans from America going over there, and then they would set up their own conclaves, put a big old fence around it, walk around and cry in the market like they special and stuff. Lance, please tell me that's not going on.
Oh, brother, it's never stopped. It's never stopped.
I saw it 30 years ago when that brother referred to those Ghanaian people as he was looking down on them, right? And it's a syndrome.
It's never stopped.
I don't know, Lance, what kind of family y'all came out of, but I was the fifth out of six. I was the run of the litter. I had two big strong brothers and three big strong sisters. All of them just not beat every day. We had to fight every day. I'm feeding them off. I'm throwing bricks. I'm looking for a glass out of the refrigerator, throw at them anything, a bowl of cereal, anything to feed them off, right? And then, I'm about 7 or 8 years old, and maybe about 9 or 10, and then one of our little cousins came from Chicago because his father, them sissies growing up in Chicago. We grew up about like 25 miles out in the dirt in the rural area. So sent them out there for the summer, and this boy, 40 years later, he still calls me up complaining about how we whooped him up every day. I said, man, I had to whoop you up every day. Do you know how I was getting oppressed? I'm looking for somebody to whoop up. So this is what's going on, bro. This whole mentality, right. Like Black Americans go over there because we've been oppressed here. We're going to find somebody to oppress there. And we should do a show on that. I mean,
one of the things we need to talk about is just re-education, reorientation of people to Africa. Because if you've been gone and you've been in captivity and you've been part of descendants of slaves in different regions, or you've just been in the diaspora in a long time and just away from the continent, or never grew up on the continent, never was introduced to African concepts, you need to be educated and introduced to those things. You need to be re-educated and reintroduced to African society. So It's an ongoing challenge. It's definitely a challenge.
But here I am. I was conscious, when I went over there. So when I saw some relatives go over there recently, some friends, and they were like, they're partying at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, schlup, getting high and stuff like that. I'm like, so y'all picking up America and y'all taking it with you and y'all taking it right down in Africa. Good. Good. No.
Yeah. People will bring their familiar with them. That's what they try to do. And I'm talking to a lot of people who are trying to to move to Africa in various places, and they're going through that exact same thing. They want to build community there because they're uncomfortable in those surroundings and some familiar, so they want to bring what's familiar with them. And
let me interject really quick, Brother Malik. You know, from communicating with me over the phone and images I've shared with you of me walking in the streets amongst the people, shopping with the people, on the vans, riding with folks. I don't bring that out here, but I see a lot of it out here. These folks come out here.
No.
I know that. But I said that to say this is that there are many who want to be so exclusive when they come, just like you mentioned. And they're trying to turn this place into a party place. 30 December, where they party.
Dr. White wanted to chime in. Dr. White, before you chime in, it's sort of like what Art was saying and Lance was just talking about. It's sort of like, let me go to an Italian restaurant and order Chinese. No. You go to an Italian restaurant, eat Italian. You go to Africa, you might as well stay in the Bronx. You might as well stay in the west side of Chicago. What are you doing? Anyway, Dr. White.
Yeah, I see it as a historical issue. I mean, we saw the same phenomenon when former African slaves from the United States went to Liberia.
Yes, perfect.
All right, whereby they wanted to treat the Africans in the same manner as whites treated Black Americans. And so they had this concept, this Western concept, even though I'm mistreated in America, I am better than you. And this phenomenon continues. It's just up to the last 15 years that the Liberians have really elected a president from Liberia. Before, they were all connected to the special class that they call Americo-Liberians, up until recently. Yeah. And we see the same phenomenon throughout the African continent because most African Americans dictated, like Brother Arthur stated, by this psychopathic element that they're better, and that they want to bring forth a society that can clean up Africa, destroy the culture. So they're going there. Most of them are not going to assimilate or to integrate, but they're going in primarily to dominate because they think they are better.
Yeah.
All right. They have a better element. And now I saw an article talking about Ghana, most recently, that many of the people in Ghana, they're feeling as if many of the Western American Blacks are getting preferential treatment. They are acting better. And some of them are actually calling for deportation of them. And talking about deportation, which I found it very interesting, right now Ghana, which we're not talking about too much, Ghana has a mass deportation of Nigerians, right? But at the same time, the Accra government has signed a contract with Washington, whereby West African deportees from the United States should be going to Ghana as opposed to their home countries. So already they have accepted people from, out of all places, Nigeria, the place that since they're already deporting Nigerians, the Gambia, Togo, Liberia, and several other countries. So we have a strange dichotomy that's taking place, with the African Americans, with the Ghanaians deporting, and this strange relationship with Washington.
Well, a lot of this is being instigated by Washington. A lot of this is being instigated by Europe and white supremacy. They want us to be divided. They want us to be segmented. And they're going to do everything that they can. They are going to work every wedge. They're going to work every crack to see if they can make that division even wider. So anytime they can use the fact that they've got all of these 54 different states that they created and colonies that they created, and they can still administratively push through economic pressure or subtle little nonsense, they're going to use that. They're going to use that to divide us even further. But what we definitely don't need is African Americans going to the continent and trying to create their own little communities. It's not.
Yeah.
Not only is it not practical, it's not going to work. Africans are not going to allow you to do that. I've been to Africa enough to know that African people, I don't care what part of the continent you go to and visit, you are going to be made to feel at home if you have the blessing of intelligence enough to accept that. Just let it go.
But I agree with you, Arthur, in reference to the historical pattern that you gave about the divide and conquer. But now Africans have a choice. Their leadership have a choice to accept the crumbs and the bigotry that the Western governments are doing, or not to. If they accept it, you cannot always blame the Western governments. They're just offering something. It's like Shaitan. He didn't tell you to do anything. He offered you something, and you did, and you decided if you wanted to do that. So we have to begin to look at that. Then at the same time, there is a strange relationship now with West Africa. With Africans and African Americans. On one hand, the African Americans are saying, yes, we are better, we're greater, we can offer you something. But at the same time, you do have some Africans who are manipulating the African Americans who are going there, all right, for economic and political reasons. So therefore, there has to be a full educational structure that is in line with both groups, so there can be an element of real understanding.
That plays right into the hands of white supremacy. That's exactly what they want you to do. That's exactly what they want us to do. That's exactly what they want those so-called African leaders to do. Africa is full of these systematic democratic elected leaders who really don't represent the majority of those populations. And that stuff is breaking down all over Africa, from Chad to Madagascar, from Ivory Coast to Mali to Burkina Faso and other places across the continent. It is falling apart. We don't see it because we don't get a chance to, it's not going to be on social media that much. It's not going to be in mainstream media. It is going to be something that kind of operates much below the radar, but it is there. It is evident. And like I said, I've been from Sudan to Zimbabwe, South Africa, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Ghana, and a number of countries in West Africa. Africa is changing, but it is also holding fast to its own cultural dynamic. And you're going to have to understand that if you want to go back to Africa, you have to humble yourself and be African. If you don't know that, you will learn it. You'll learn it just as fast as you'll learn that lions will chase you if you get out in the bush. You're going to learn what's going on. You're going to learn Africa.
Yeah.
Interesting anecdote. I just left Africa a few weeks ago, and I ran into a brother from Liberia, and Dr. White, we have to on the context that you talked about over the last decade and a half, where the Liberians have kind of shifted away from that whole Charles Taylor, Samuel Doe conflict that led to those devastating situation. So we really need to talk about that. But I ran into this real gracious brother from Liberia, and he said to me that he was headed. I asked him, what are you doing in Morocco? He said, I'm headed to Europe, right? And obviously the migration thing that we see out of West Africa and North Africa headed to the gateway is Spain, right? Big issues there, big problems. It's a mess. But anyway, this gracious brother He asked me for money, to help him get to the capital, so he could Rabat, so he can start his migration with some papers or something. And I didn't have any Moroccan money with me, so I asked him could he join me for lunch, which he did. And we had a very good conversation. I saw him again probably a week later. That brother had the biggest smile on his face. It was just incredible, man. It just how African people are just are trying to find their way, but we got to figure it out because there's a lot of that migration going on. The second thing I want to say to this point, there was a brother from Florida by way of Mississippi who happened to bounce in Morocco while I was there, and he kept referring to the Amazigh, which is the largest tribe there, and then they have sub tribes. We were in what is called the land of the Sus, that particular sub tribe, and he kept calling them Berbers. And I kept correcting this brother. I say, don't call them that. I said, this is what the white Kufa calls them. This is what the Westerners call them. No, they're not Berbers, right? And then he would turn around. He said it 3 more times on 3 different occasions. Man, I was like, I give up, bro. I said, look, in front of them, you call them Berbers, and they call themselves Amazigh. And then they have a tribe amongst other tribes, other Amazigh, who are Sus. Black as me, all the way to looking like a Puerto Rican. So this brother's refusal, Art, to correct himself here, just amazed me. It's like, why are you using the Western framework as you look at these people who you're sitting down having lunch with? They're not Berber. Anyway.
I find it interesting that you spoke to the brother, and if I'm not corrected, you said that he was trying to get to Europe.
He's trying to get to Spain, and Europe. Europe would be the gateway from North Africa into Southern Europe, and I've seen quite a few of them. Some from Cameroon, some from the Gambia.
So he wanted to migrate. Those kind of people, I don't have a lot of sympathy or love for, because for me, many of them are running away from their own society and stopping, and they're not interested in helping their own community, but they're already interested in getting involved in a community that's already established. And when that community rejects them, they start hollering racism and discrimination. So these people I have a real problem with, and I wouldn't give them a red cent. And many of them call me from all night, from Kenya, from the Sudan, from West Africa. Dr. White, Papa, honey, hey, help me, all right, to get over there. I'm willing to join the army, and I tell them, keep your backside in your own country and build there.
And that was my message as I ran into 4 or 5 other brothers. One brother got very upset with me because I said to him, I tell you what, there's 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 cranes up in this city, man. There's jobs everywhere, literally. I said, let's go. Let me talk to my friend Muhammad and get you a job. He didn't want a job, bro. He wanted this so that they can keep moving. And he didn't.
But they want a white woman too.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're in Northern Africa, so you're not a white woman. But the whole point about it is that he did not want to go back home or even establish there in Morocco, in the Maghreb, and get a job because there's jobs everywhere, and then send money back home until he's able to migrate back there. Wasn't interested in that. He was interested in going to Europe.
Yeah, I mean, all you got to do is go around Washington and Atlanta. You always find a brother who's driving a Lyft or Uber talk about he's a king or a princess, and they have all this land. Well, damn it, if you're that, then go back home and build your society as opposed to driving an Uber.
Yeah. Well, and again, we have to look in a mirror when we're talking about ourselves, and no matter what area of the world we're from. I mean, we're black is us, black is we. These are our people.
Yes.
They are us. We as African Americans have had certainly a jaded history of similar things that we could characterize and and pick out about ourselves. And I don't see much different. When you see someone aspiring to go somewhere else, to do something else, I understand that. I don't necessarily fault them for trying to improve their condition and improve themselves. For generations, Africans, the best of the African clan has been sent away from the continent to go to school, to work, because they had the most promise. They were the most intelligent. They sent out often, those people in the family that could do that. And I don't see that being any different than what we did from the South or from, some.
Well, the big difference, Arthur, and the difference is that when you're going from the South to the North, you're still in the confines of that nation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you're still a citizen of that nation, no matter how good or bad it is. So therefore, your money will go some way, somehow to to upkeep and promote your own community. The people who are coming in from Africa to study, the majority of them, they say they want to go back, but they don't want to go back. They misuse the government's money to come to the United States or Europe to get an education, all right, and they stay, which makes them a disingenuous and makes them a traitor to their own people. And those same people will always talk about how corrupt their own country is and don't do a doggone thing to try to change it, because they like the idea of living in the United States and Europe, getting a white girl, all right, and getting promoted in a position that many African Americans can't get now, because many of the Africans do not have the same type of attitude in reference to fight against racism as we do. African Americans can smell racism, all right? Africans, on the other hand, when they get here, they say, everything is nice. You see? So it's a difference.
Hey, well, listen, again, I think, you're going to find some things that fit your analysis, and you're going to find other things that don't and fit in another completely different analysis. I found a lot of Africans who, like I said, come here, they're doing what their families want them to do, and they're repatriating funds. They are sending money home and doing it in a very significant way. Just like we have people who come here from Mexico and Latin America who send money back to their families. Africans do the same thing. So again, we're all trying to make it. We're all trying to better our condition and better ourselves, and we're trying to find ways to make it work.
One of the things that we all historians say, let's put it in historical context. 1966 Immigration Act, 1960, 2/3 of Africa gets their independence, the year of Africa. Julius Nyerere, he comes up with a plan, and that plan is, let's send our youth to the West to get educated, and then come back and do nation building, right? So the whole Barack Obama Sr. thing, that's why he comes over here, right? So we saw during the mid to late 60s an influx of Africans on this Julius Nyerere movement toward African independence. That was the context of the African students coming. All right, some of them got lost in the barrel, like Barack Obama Sr. Came over here chasing white girls, and then he heads back home and dies of drunk. So and then there's this other context that we have to also consider. Two things. One is that because of the end of colonialism and the exploitation of Western imperialism, particularly American imperialism, they, along with the Mexicans, because of NAFTA in the late 90s, are coming back to claim their resources. It's really a revolutionary move. The last thing I want to say to Dr. White and Art, consider this: if an African brother or sister is trained as a lawyer, trained as a physician, trained as a nurse, trained as a massage therapist, on the African continent with their certifications and their degrees. As soon as they hit American soil, none of those degrees even count. They have to start all over again. You know, this is very unjust. So we might find someone who's an engineer back home on the African continent, and like Dr. White say, he might be driving an Uber. And you say, man, look, you're an engineer. Why are you doing? Here you got a construct in the United States that doesn't even recognize their education and their certifications, and this should be an attack point that we go after to make it a little easier. But again, I think the relationship between the brothers and sisters from the continent of Africa and Black Americans is a dicey one. My antennas always go up when I hear Black Americans say, you know, these Africans as if they're different. The ones that I've encountered, and we break the ice, we Muslim or we're African conscious, and we start talking about Asaje Kwame Nkrumah and Amilcar Cabral and Thomas Sankara, immediately the walls break down and they're inviting us into their houses. So I think there's some work on our side here. We live here. We could be better hosts. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
So we again, you listen to the Muslim Street. Let me just pause here. Dr. White, if you could mention our sponsor. And you can also find us at www.themuslimstreet.com across all social media posts. So, Dr. White, if you tell us a little bit about our sponsor, new sponsor for the Muslim Street, some exciting things that are going on out of Orlando, Florida.
Yes, absolutely. We're sponsoring, and we're focusing on pardons, clemencies, sealing of records, as well as expungements. If you're interested in working with us and getting our services, please contact us at wmvent@gmail.com, wmvent@gmail.com. Your aid into our efforts goes directly to the support of Muslim Streets, the number one programming on the diaspora on any platform in our country.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think that's a serious thing. The 1994 Joe Biden architect crime bill that sent hundreds of thousands of Black men and women to jail, that compromised even their passports, Dr. White, where literally they are signed to the lower 48, because you know they ain't going to Hawaii or Alaska, all right?
That's
You
right.
know, it's like being in jail. And simply because of these draconian laws that were heaped upon our people. So here's the way, folks in the listening audience, you can begin to address getting your passport back and give you the freedom to travel to Africa or anywhere else that you want to go as a free Black man or Black woman. Our main topic on the show tonight, we're going to shift gears here, is Donald Trump and the occupation of Chicago. All of us from the Midwest, Dr. White has lived in Chicago. I was born and raised in Cabrini Green. Not the Cabrini Greens you see on Good Times. I was born in the Cabrini Greens that you see on Cooley High, right? On Mohawk. I just want to make a distinction there. So you know, when preach at the row houses, Mohawk, that's where we come from. We know Chicago. We know historically, even before Obama shows up and talks about he's a community organizer. You know, we were on the streets of Chicago, Dr. White, in the late 70s, early 80s, working with the Vice Lords, working with the Black Gangster Disciples, the El Rukans. In 1985, there was a historic meeting hosted and called by Dr. Khalid Muhammad at Minister Farrakhan's headquarters on the south side of Chicago on a Saturday. It was an all-day meeting, and he had every representation from every major street organization there. The El Rukans were there. The Mickey Cobras was there. The Vice Lords were there. The Gangster Disciples and the Black Gangsters all under one house, right? And we dealt with it and dealt with issues and called truces and everything else. More and more, but we were on the ground. So we know Chicago. Now, Lance, play stop one, and then we'll follow up with discussion from there.
Afraid of this black man in Chicago is because they did not help me get elected, and I owe them nothing. That's right. Black man in this country right now. Because not only did we put forth the largest investment bond in the history of Chicago, over $1 billion to build housing and economic development. Not only did we put forth the largest investment using Brandon Scott's interests, we have hired more young people than any other administration. Crime is down. We're building more affordable homes. We are controlling the airports. We control the transportation system. We are moving to build a sustainable community school, which these were the hopes and aspirations of our ancestors. After the Civil War, they said housing. We're building 10,000. We said transportation. Put hundreds of millions of dollars into it. We said jobs, we're hiring people. We said economic development. And let me just say this last part about the immigrants. If anybody believes that a black man is going to get upset about white supremacy against brown people who have been here for 10,000 years.
Yes,
We are calling for reparations, and I am not going to be mad at a brown person that wants to find freedom in this city. Because if my freedom is good enough for white people, then my freedom is good enough for brown people.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's Mayor Johnson, City of Chicago, the current mayor there, speaking to the issue of a great concern of mine, as I talked in the prelude to this, is that we also organized with the Latin Kings and the Latin Counts in Humboldt Park.
Yeah.
It was also Dr. Jose Lopez, who was the head of the FALN, the Puerto Rican Liberation Movement in Chicago, who gave major props to Muslims, major props to the Black liberation struggle, work with the National Black United Front. And so this whole issue of the this Venezuelan community that was dumped inside of Chicago by the Biden administration. Let's put this in its context. And one of the things that rose out of their part, and Dr. White, and I like to start the conversation off there, was this MS-13 gang element inside of the Venezuelans. They dumped them inside of the Black community. They dumped them on the east side, what we call over east. Right, and it created a problem, right? Ecosystem problem. So at the same time, we are in a reality where Chicago 30 years ago, and what I was referencing, had 4 or 5 major gangs, particularly in the Black community, and I mentioned also the Holy Grail of the Latin Kings in Chicago, not New York. And that was much easier to manage if we were going to be dealing with conflict resolution, right? And truces that had to be taken care of over turf. Now, out of those same 5 or 6 major gangs that were embedded historically in Chicago, there's over 60 factions, right? There's no leader. Like we had in the days of Chief Malik, Jeff Ford of the Arukans, or Larry Hoover and Barksdale, people like that, or Willie Lord on the west side with the vice lords controlling 30,000 men. That's not the case now. We have over 60, in essence, different fractions. So it's problematic. But I support what Mayor Johnson just said. because we cannot forget that at best we're part of the Black liberation struggle, and we cannot disconnect from the history of that. What say you guys?
Well, I don't like Johnson. I think he is disingenuous, and I think he's a traitor to our race. The reason why I say that, first of all, he has taken money out of the Black community and allocated monies for housing and opportunities for illegal aliens. Monies that should be given to the struggling African American community that's in Chicago. They have absolutely taken over places on the south side, on the east side, and the west side. And they have absolutely created a pillar of strength in those communities, while at the same time, the African Americans in those communities who have been struggling are getting very, very little. Along with this, it is absolutely true that they had Tren de Aguegua, their gang. They have had some problems there, and the African American gangs there, up to the last year and a half, have been fighting a war with them, because they are, even though you said that they have all been broken down into fractions, the ones there, they are holding on against these other people. Then on top of that, Chicago is in a deficit of $1.5 billion. They basically are going bankrupt. And much of that, and the reason why they're in that deficit is because much of that money, again, was allocated to other groups, illegals, and they were not putting money back in. And to make it personal with me, the last time I was going to Chicago, I was on a plane with a guy from Ukraine, and he had just came into the United States 5 months earlier, got a wonderful job in Miami, and he is making six figures. Didn't have no degree, no nothing. So I asked, "Why are you going to Chicago?" He said, "I got a better offer. They're giving me more things. They're giving me an apartment, a car, all types of opportunities." I said, "Whom?" He said, "Primarily the government of Chicago."
Yeah, he misspoke there. Who was giving it to him? Or was the Biden administration who?
The Biden administration, absolutely.
I always try to put things in its proper context, right? Nothing is in the vacuum here. The Ukrainians were green lighted into America when not only an immediate citizenship during the Biden administration and the war he created over there, which was subsequent to the overthrow of the Ukrainian government in 2014 by the Obama administration, which Joe Biden, was the vice president. Now, here's the point I'm making, Dr. White, and Art, I want you to jump in, is that the basis to, and Mayor Johnson makes this point many times. I've heard him make this point, is that the Ukrainians have came here and they got everything they wanted. And you just mentioned that, Viper, Dr. White, the green lighting first of their citizenship. And do you know that these crackers from the Ukraine, all right, Zelensky, with his Zionist no good self, negotiated this deal with the Biden administration and the Trump administration, because they're all the same. They both are the same. They signed off on it. Did you know that as soon as they get over here, and if they're of age being 58 and 59, that they get Social Security? Literally.
Yeah.
Right. These white Ukrainians, right? So when we talk about the onslaught of this quote unquote illegals, they're only illegal because they're non-white. They're only illegal because they're Mexican, and the United States government launched this illegal and internationally illegal, and that's why we saw the World Economic Organization, World Health, going up in smoke in the late 90s, 1999, particularly in Seattle, rioting all over the place because of NAFTA. The North American Free Trade Agreement is the only reason why they're coming across that border. Prior to that, they didn't come across the border. I know I was on the border in 1995, and I went across twice. and
Yes.
they're like,
But we cannot make the argument. We got to be very careful when we make the argument that the ones who are coming across the border, the Latinos now, they're like somehow they're close to the Chicano movement of the 1960s, or they're in with Cesar Chavez. These are different cats. And these cats who are coming in do not align with the struggles of the African American community. A person who really spoke about that was a guy by the name of Claude Anderson in the 1990s. He stated that the ones coming in will be much more racist towards us than we have ever seen in our lives. And he is absolutely true.
Claude Anderson is a black capitalist. I don't support anything that he says. Okay,
but some things he says is absolutely true.
By blacks, I mean that lying about the black economic wealth in this country, some trillions and trillions of dollars. Dr. Jared Ball debunked that whole myth. All I'm saying is Dr. White, is that prior to NAFTA, right, the Mexicans wasn't coming over the border. They enjoyed their own home. And how do I know? Because why are Americans flying down to Acapulco? Why are they going to Tulum, the home of the Mayas? Why are they going to art, these other places, to vacation and these beautiful places? You think these Mexicans want to leave their home? They're coming to chase their economic resources that was stolen from them by NAFTA.
Well, we also have a border International Monetary Fund that devalued the peso even before NAFTA from being worth a half a dollar, which was like 2 to 1 against the U.S. currency, to 400 to 1. And they did that very quickly. That drove Mexicans north across the border. It was a deliberate economic strategy to give farm workers and those people who worked in the agribusiness industry a substantial pool of cheap labor, and it's been coming back in waves ever since. So there's methodology to that. But I was in Chicago a couple of years ago when Brandon Johnson was elected, and I will take full responsibility for our role. We worked very diligently to help get him elected because he was running against Paul Vallas, who was the former chief of police, who was going to turn Chicago into a police state if that would have occurred, and people would have been probably having a whole different argument right now. So lesser of two evils, if you want to call it that. But through the radio station that I was a part owner of in Chicago, we worked very hard to make sure he was elected. We had 750,000 users and listeners in the greater Chicago area. So we had a significant reach into the voting population and the audience, and we did everything that we could to get Brandon elected. And I was personally thanked and recognized for supporting his victory. So I have to look at this from the standpoint of what was best for the community at that time. And we look back in retrospect. I see what Brandon's doing. What he's doing is he's trying to make sure he has a undergirded voter base among brown people as well that can reelect him if that's what he chooses to do, which is what politicians do. This is what they do. It's not out of character at all. But what is Brandon doing for the African American community in Chicago that other previous mayors weren't doing? I've heard some anecdotes and some other databases that have said that, since Harold Washington, he's done more than any other mayor of Chicago for the actual Black community there in Chicago. Now, I'm not on the ground in Chicago now. And it'd be great if we could open up the phones and talk with people in Chicago. It'd probably be fun to do.
Do a show out of Chicago, Dr. White. I think that'd be great. So we're coming up on our last 10 minutes, and Dr. White, I want to shift toward the away from ICE and immigration into the occupation of Chicago and crime. But before I do that, on the tail end, Dr. White, we're going to have a memorandum to memorial to Sister Evelyn Muhammad. We're going to pull up on the screen, and I'd like for you to talk about anecdotally and also historically her context and the importance of her in the Nation of Islam, and of course, being a Muslim, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, etc. Some good stuff there. And you knew her personally. I like to talk about that. But before I get to that, let's spend about 5-7 minutes toward the end of the program on crime and the occupation of Chicago by the National Guards. And I want to preface this before I turn this to Dr. White in saying in 1973, there were nearly 1,200 homicides in Chicago. And I'll do this over 20 years. In 1993, it was approaching around the same thing, 1,145, 1,200 homicides. In 2003, we saw the numbers are pretty much dipping around 900, and then about 10 years ago, let's go back 2015-16, those numbers hover around 500. Now, if we look at 1973, I was in Chicago in 1973. 1993, I was in Chicago in 1993. I remember one of my favorite conversations, Dr. White, and I'd like you to jump in on this occupation. And, Chicago's a hellhole. It's a war zone right now, which is not. In 1993, in 1991, on my way to a day before I was going to Ghana, my aunt called me and she said, I'm really worried and concerned. You're going over to Africa and you really should be careful. I said, Auntie, you should have been worried that if I stopped on 87th Street at an ATM, it's going to blow my head off as they take my money. We're talking 1,200 murders. It ain't no 1,200 murders over in Accra. You know what I'm saying, Dr. White? So, yeah. Let's. The numbers don't add up to Chicago being a war zone, but what has happened that is not being publicized across social media because the Zionists literally have bought out all the social media. Okay,
right.
So what is not being publicized is two things. One, there's a bounty on of $10,000 on the head of any ICE employee who thinks they're coming in there and doing what they do. This is literally on the street. This is information directly from the street. The other thing that I want to say before I turn this over to you, brothers, is on the question of the gangs. They say that you see those little sissy National Guard who works as lawyers on the weekend, or maybe they doctors trying to get their tuition paid for, or something like that. You send them in the Black community, and they going out in body bags. This is literally the messaging that's coming off the street in Chicago from sources that I have. Dr. White and Art, I'll let you take it toward the end before we jump in with Sister Evelyn Williams.
Well, you want to go first, Brother Art?
Well, I'll let you go ahead and speak to that. Like I said, I'm not on the ground in Chicago, and you brothers have a lot of experience in the streets in Chicago. But that's funny, man. That's
what part of Chicago you from? What part of Chicago are you from? Detroit?
I'm from the Detroit side, right?
Well, what's taking place is that first of all, for African Americans in Chicago, I almost said Detroit. In Chicago, when it comes down to ICE, I would tell them to stand down. Let ICE and the aliens and their issue deal with that. However, if Trump decides to come into our community, that is something that I would resist completely, because by him coming in, he's basically saying that we are a colonized state. All right. And we have to push back against that. colonized state, that means that we are aliens. We are something wrong with us, and we need to be subdued. He would make us enemy number one. Sadly, if President Trump and others like him are really concerned about crime, percentually, there's more crime in Springfield, Illinois than in Chicago, Illinois. But the reason why he doesn't go downstate is because of the complexion of the people. You see, if you notice, he's talking about Memphis having National Guards there. He's going into Los Angeles. He's going into Miami. Those areas, and when he goes into Miami, he's not even going to the Latino community. He's going to Little Haiti in those communities. So therefore, it's an attack on us, and we have to resist it. And I would go right with my brother Malik. He's, I love Malik when he talks. I remember his first talk. He said, "Hell no, we won't go," which means to me is that we will resist by any means necessary.
Yeah,
no doubt. We've had in Chicago a crime problem for a while, and we all were involved in trying to find resolution for the disproportionate challenge that we were having in Chicago. But this attack by the right wing, white supremacy through Donald Trump and ICE and whatever else he wants to bring, National Guard, is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, and I know, we talk about Detroit and we can talk about Philly and we can talk about, of course, there's already an assault on DC. Those things are coming to a Black community near you because we are really their objective. They really are not concerned as much about brown people as they are about Black people. And that is evident by everything that they've done, their policy documents, their 2025 plan, et cetera, it goes on. They are after us. We are their objective. So they're coming for us and smoke trees. I think we need to be careful about how we paint ourselves and our response to it. We need multiplicity in terms of how we respond and react to what's going on. So
remember, this thing was played out before in the 1990s when many African American leaders, started arguing and saying that the crime rate in Black America is bad and we need to do something. And what did those Caucasians do in Washington? Biden and the Republicans, all of them, called for 3 strikes you out. And we saw how that has devastated our community. So those Negroes now who are praising the National Guard for going into the community, they need to rethink because they're really calling for the continued destruction of Black America.
Yeah, and before Brother Lansky bring up SOP 3, and that's Sister Evelyn Williams. We allow Dr. White to close this out. 2 things as he bringing that up that I want to mention to Dr. White's point is that it was the Congressional Black Caucus in 1994. Many members of the Congressional Black Caucus, including Kwasi and Fume, right? Cynthia McKinney, which I'm sad to say, that supported that 1994 crime bill. He's exactly right when Dr. Wright brings that stat up. As Lance is bringing up the picture of Sister Evelyn, one other thing I want to remind, and Dr. White, you're going to love this one. 1982, I'm sitting in a workshop on Malcolm X at the Saviors Day Convention. And it's a Saturday afternoon, and Preston Wilcox from the National Black United Front is there. Omari Obadeli and Chokwe Lumumba from the Republic of New Africa. All the revolutionaries are there, right? You have Brother Akbar Muhammad, and they debating this Malcolm X thing. And then as I turned over you for the last couple of minutes on Sister Evelyn, Chokwe Lumumba says, in relationship to the conversation that we were just having, he said, we need a peekaboo paramilitary force like the FOI, who will tell us who will coming into the community, what they're doing there, and who won't be coming out. Dr. White.
Yes, well, may God be pleased with Sister Evelyn. She just passed a few days ago. She was one of the wives of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, one of the wives. And this is a beautiful lady. She was brilliant in Islam. She came to Islam in 1952, but through the Nation of Islam. However, it was not the first time she heard of Islam. A number of brothers and sisters in the Boston area where she lived were members of the Ahmadiyya Islamic movement. However, she said she didn't want to join them because they were smoking a lot of reefer and doing a lot of bad things. But when she heard the call from Malcolm X, you see, and then the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that's where she put her trust and her time in. She is one of the great educators of the Nation of Islam, even though people like to state that there was division among the sisterhood who are wise. She worked for the greater good, working alongside of Clara Muhammad, Tanetta Muhammad, and other ladies. She also gave the Honorable Elijah Muhammad children, all right, who are now was brought up in the Nation of Islam, and they're carrying on the legacy of their father and the legacy of their mother, Evelyn. I used to know her on the south side of Chicago. I stayed off of 69th and Merle. She stayed a few blocks from me, and I would go and sit down with her for hours. And this woman at the time, she was unassuming. She didn't have a car. She took it to a taxi. She didn't have a lot of people running around her as security. She is by herself. I would see her in Jewels and other stores. But she represented, in my estimation, the best of womanhood within the organization. She never said a mumbling, nasty word about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Louis Farrakhan, or anyone. Whatever she felt, she took with her to her grave. I have great admiration to her. For her, she spoke constantly about Minister John Shabazz. She spoke constantly of how she would travel from Boston to New York and from New York to Washington, wherever the Muslims were, she was going to be there. So she is one of the mothers of the faithful, as we call them in Islam. And we thank God for her service, and may Allah be pleased with her and grant her entry when it's time into paradise.
I
Salam
mean,
alaikum.
beautiful, beautiful, Dr. White. That closes out our program for today. I want to thank Art Mobley, Dot 423, Dr. Viper White, my co-host, and I want to thank Lance Scurv, somewhere in Abori, for producing the Muslim Street. We'll see you next week, same time, same station, with a different topic. Hard hitting as usual. Nobody's talking like we were talking about. You know, this is hot stuff. Find us at www.themuslimstreet.com. I'll see you next week.
Salam alaikum.